All right, but that's so much for this. And then we are moving on with the program. And next, we will be hearing more on basically automation using AI. And specifically, it's about how DuckDuckGo is tackling scaling cookie pop-up protection. And the next speaker that we have with us is Maxim Soy. Oh my God, I hope I pronounced your last name halfway correct. He's senior software engineer at DuckDuckGo, and he's been working on several browser features actually, such as cookie pop-up protection, blocker tracking, and also general web compatibility research. And also in the past, he's been spending a lot of time on investigating web security research. And that has actually led him to develop a patented browser virtualization framework at Surfly. And in his talk now, we will hear more about DuckDuckGo's journey on how they were tackling the cookie pop-up automation at scale. Maxime, please join me on stage, and everyone give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. How does this work? Is this the button I need to press? Okay. Oh yeah, it works. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I can skip the second slide, I guess. So let's talk about cookie pop-ups for a bit. Yeah, my name is Max. I work on browsing features at DuckDuckGo, and in case you didn't know, DuckDuckGo has browsers. I work on a bunch of different things, and cookie pop-up protection is one of the features we're going to focus on. So there's going to be two parts to this talk. In the first one, I'm going to go over the problem space, and we'll talk about consent management market in general. I'll talk a bit about our solution, our choices that we made, and some specific challenges around that. And in the second part, I'll share more about our recent work that we've done in overcoming the scaling blockers, and namely how we use AI in that. So I assume each one of you have seen cookie pop-ups before. If you didn't, I really want to know more about you. So they come in all shapes and sizes, right? Sometimes they give you a way to opt out of some optional tracking. And they're mostly prominent in Europe right now because of GDPR. But actually, many other countries also have their own data privacy laws, right? And in case of US, for example, it even varies per state. So your experience as a user will be very different depending on where you browse from, even if it's the same site. So this also means that being compliant for websites is actually pretty tricky. So most of them, they decide to integrate third-party solutions that do the heavy lifting for them. These are called consent management platforms, or CMPs. And this is how you ensure compliance. So if you look at the market share of these CMPs, it's actually pretty interesting because even within the same legislation, like in this case, Germany and France are both under GDPR, but you can see that, well, maybe you can't see, but the top 10, even the top 10, looks very different. So there are of course some major players there, but overall there's a real competition. And of course, we know that the UX is not great with cookie pop-ups, right? First of all, well, they bloat the sites generally, and most people find them annoying and distracting. And worst of all is that sites are actually incentivized to use dark patterns to lure people into click and agree. So in this case, if you can see these red arrows, they point to the reject all buttons. You really need to look for it and read through it. And most people just click agree, right? So how do you deal with this, right? So there are multiple solutions on the market already, right? So ranging from things that click on agree to everything or accept cookies, which is not acceptable for DuckDuckGo, of course. Some other solutions, they use more like traditional filter lists, like blocking pop-ups from appearing in the first place. And at DuckDuckGo, we decided to, these are supposed to come one at a time, but we decided to actually unblock the CMPs. So we explicitly allow the CMP request to go through our filter list so the pop-up loads correctly. And then we automate the opt-out interaction. So essentially, we just click everything that's needed to opt out from like cookies and tracking. And because we believe that ultimately for the user, this is better because first of all, it gives a clear opt-out signal to the website through the official channels it supports. Second, in some legislations, it's actually the only way to opt out. So for example, in California, they can sell your data by default unless you click on this do not sell button. And also this is a way to opt out of server-side tracking, right? So it's not just about cookies. It's also like all kinds of data sharing practices, etc. So as long as the site is compliant with the law, we think it will work better for privacy. And of course, this comes on top of our normal tracker blocking protection, right? So if the site does load some trackers, they should be blocked by our normal filter list. We use cosmetic filters as well, like hiding the pop-ups, but we prefer to do it only when there is no reject button. So instead of like closing the pop-up, we would hide it. And finally, we still send the gPC signal, which some CMPs actually respect, and this is kind of like another layer of protection. So this approach has worked for us for some time, but you can tell this is, of course, more complex than doing filter lists because some pop-ups look like this, so you really need to do multiple things at once and like toggle all these checkboxes and click save. And this, because we automate, we have to actually encode everything in our rules. So we've been doing it for a while now, and most of the code lives in this library called AutoConsent that Sam built. Sam is also here, by the way. So he built it while being at Clicks and actually introduced it at this very conference 5 years ago. Ever since Sam joined DuckDuckGo, and we've been maintaining and improving the library. And right now it powers the cookie pop-up protection in all our browsers. It's also been used by Ghostery for their never consent feature, and we use it every now and then in other projects like Tracker Radar. So in a nutshell, what it does, it basically has a bunch of these JSON rules. I don't know if you can see it, but it basically has some CSS selectors to detect a certain pop-up, and then there are some steps, usually clicks, that you need to do to like click out of this pop-up. We also support opt-in, which is clicking on accept buttons, just because we can. We don't actually use it, but in the library it's there if you need it. And yeah, so this has been working for us so far, but of course, as with any privacy protection, there are challenges. Like there are breakage risks. Sometimes sites just break when you reject cookies in all kinds of weird ways. As I already mentioned, there are regional layout differences. Like it's very common for the same site to show a completely different pop-up depending on where you browse from. And so handling them all and actually even finding all of these variations is quite time-consuming. So sometimes some sites implement custom pop-ups, and we of course have to write rules to handle each of them separately. And this adds up in the maintenance because, of course, these rules, you need to update them every now and then because sites change and pop-ups change and selectors stop matching. So coverage is also a challenge because our top site coverage is actually pretty good. So we support about like up to 90%, I think, of pop-ups in top sites in Europe and similar in the US. But it doesn't necessarily translate to real-world like perceived coverage because no one visits just the top sites, right? So, and this is brings us to the final point, which is the importance of the long tail. So, like there are these thousands of millions of sites, right, that are unpopular, but people visit them, and this is like contributing to the real-world coverage. But covering this long tail is very difficult because every new rule would have a smaller impact than the last one. So this brings us to the second part of this talk. This problem of the long tail, became obvious last year because by last year we've already supported all like maybe about 80% of the top CMPs. And then we would still keep writing rules, but the coverage kind of stagnated because, it's long tail. We had dimension returns this way, and we calculated at some point that we would need at least 2 people working full-time on this just to keep up. And for a small team like ours, it's just impossible. So, what do you do in this kind of case, right? So you automate, right? So, and about the same time, AI became practical. It became practical, and like Brave came out with the Cookie Crumbler project, which was pretty cool. So we asked them to write new octo-consent rules, and it didn't work. It was supposed to come out one at a time as a surprise. But it didn't work, and it actually totally sucked, to be honest, because the problem is... Oh, come on. So most CMPs, they are customizable. So all of these pop-ups here are actually, even though they look differently, they are variations of the same CMP. And it's somewhat of an art, I would say, to come up with a good selector that matches the correct button in all of these cases. You really need to understand what this specific class name means and how likely it is to change. And LLMs are just not very good at this, at least for now. So they can't do it. But what they can do is they can make you a rule that covers this specific pop-up in this specific scenario in this specific domain, right? And this is actually much easier to automate and generate automatically at scale. So that's what we've been doing. And in fact, we don't even need AI for the most part, right? So all we use AI for is to, at some point, we ask it, is this text a cookie pop-up or not? And this is a very simple text classification that even the cheapest model can do for you with error rate of less than 10%. And then you add some simple sanity checks on top of it, some regexes, and then the error rate goes less than 1%, which is pretty usable. So this was a big shift in our mental model because before this, we would write site-specific rules as an exception, right? So only for the most popular sites that have custom pop-ups. And now this is kind of the default, and we would only write generic rules manually for the most popular CMPs. And one important upside of site-specific rules is that they're more resilient to breakage. So the worst thing that can happen, right, is that your rule would start clicking the wrong buttons. It's quite rare, but still possible. And in case of a generic rule, you might just start breaking a lot of sites at once. For a site-specific rule, it only applies to a single site. So, and we already have tools to mitigate this sort of site-specific breakage. So usually we can respond in like minutes as soon as we know it. So we could reuse those tools. So we've been working on it in the past few months. And so right now we have this system that can generate thousands of new rules every week. It supports multiple languages. It can update the existing rules when the sites change, which is quite important. It happens often. And we also invested time into automatic validation because, as you can imagine, the sheer amount of stuff that it generates, like it eventually opens up the PR to auto-consent, is just overwhelming, right? So it's impossible to review all of these rules manually. So we really had to invest some time into this automatic tests, verification, validation, and surfacing the dangerous changes. And then also on top of that, we invested in some tools to make this manual review easier, so that you could have all the screenshots, and at a glance you can tell if this is working or not. And if you do need to, so essentially like from 1,000 new rules, you would only need to manually check maybe 5. So this was took a lot of work to do. So there are several ways to go from here. So I think most interesting are, apart from the expanding this to like more complex flows. Like right now we automated the one-click flows, which is like click and reject all button. But then multi-click flows is something that we want to expand to. And of course, now the latest hardware they come with like local on-device LLM models, which theoretically could be a holy grail for privacy. So this is also an interesting area to explore. And finally, so if any of this is interesting to you, we really welcome external contributions because, as I said, we're a small team. You can install DuckDuckGo app, but many people don't realize that you don't have to use it as a browser. There are multiple features that are just standalone, like VPN, email protection, app tracking protection. So we can do that and report issues on GitHub, Reddit. We can't respond to everything, but of course we have systems that do surface the most impactful breakage. As I said, auto-consent is all open sourced. We had some great contributions from Ghostery earlier, which is, thank you very much for that. It's very great. And well, DuckDuckGo is hiring, so that's like, if you want to know more about the company, find me after the talk. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Okay, thank you for the call. Thank you for the talk. And I want what do you think about websites blocking user to do certain activities when the cookie is blocked? For example, there are some news websites that reject user to play video on the article, for example, because user didn't consent to that person. Even
right,
there is an embedded YouTube video. Do you regard this as a breakage?
So I think there is a nuance to that. First of all, it depends on what kind of website it is, right? So like sometimes it's just like if it's like core functionality, we might mitigate, so like disable the protection. But it's also differs per site, like how do they communicate this, right? Sometimes it would just look very bad, so like it would not render anything with huge blank space or something. Sometimes they would tell you, okay, you've chosen to reject cookies, and that's why. we can't show you this. So yeah, it's sometimes it can be tricky, but I would say in most cases it's case by case we look at it, but in most cases there is kind of like a solution that is not obvious, but sort of like it's sensible. So we would just address it case by case. So there are different options, right? So you could just leave it as is. You could disable the protection so that it's not automatically clicking for you. And let the user do it. Yeah, those are main things that we could do.
So those kind of cases, you wouldn't obviously allow some things, some consents to specific services. So
no, like
allow and reject, and you don't plan to like add some little options to less breakage. I regard this as a breakage because I remember it was CBS News, and users just couldn't play any video in the website when the consent is fully blocked or rejected.
Yeah. Well, if it's a core feature of the website to play those videos and they stop working after you click reject cookies, then I would say it's breakage. And then like we would never click accept for the user. But what we can do, we can just leave it to them. So like show the pop-up and let them make this choice. And then, of course, there is still, as I said, there is still tracker blocking on top of that, right? So a lot of times, even if the user clicks accept, the trackers would still be blocked afterwards, right? The site would still load.
Yeah, I know this is a very feature-promising question, but thank you for the answer.
Yeah.
And maybe
It's a good question. It is indeed one of the more difficult problems, how to deal with it, and
yeah, correct.
Hey, thank you for the talk. I was wondering, what's holding you back on releasing this as a browser extension?
as a browser extension. Oh, so yes, you're right. Right now, it's not. It's in all our native apps, like in all the browsers, but not in the actual DuckDuckGo extension. We do have, like, autoconsent comes with its own like extension that we use for testing, but it's been hard to just. There is, I would say, there is almost no technical blockers to that, but it's just been hard to prioritize. Yeah, like if you follow, like we're now really focused on making our apps better, and there are all these other features that are only possible or make sense in the native apps. So we're kind of focused on those. But yeah, it I think it will probably come somewhere in the future, but right now there's no timeline on the extension, unfortunately. You can use the autoconsent extension. That's totally working. Just you'll have to build it yourself. It's not in the stores, but it's just like one script. Oh, right, yeah. That's another option.
You say you never accept by default. Well, never accept the consent. What about consent wars? Because that's one that's been coming out. Where you have to pay, although the main payment.
Yeah, paywalls.
How do you view those grand scheme things?
Right now, when we have it, we just don't do anything. So obviously, we can't pay for the user, and accepting is still not an option. But yeah, for now we just leave them as is and not do anything. But we're accumulating these cases, and at some point it might be. So it's still like the minority of the overall minority of sites that do that. But yeah, at some point it might become a critical problem that we would have to somewhat solve.
The whole idea with the embeddeds, just to add to the previous talk, is that how we viewed it in EasyList cookies, that if it breaks the site functionality where you expect the video to show, that would be technically, we want to ensure that the video shows what the user expects. This is what we're saying, rather than a blank white box where there's nothing showing, I guess. And the breakage people will see is that why is this not there when they're expecting it? I guess it'll be collateral damage where you remove consent, sure, but you've also removed some functionality that the user was also expecting as well.
Yeah. Well, it's a balancing act, right? I mean, there's no good answer, and all like that applies everywhere. Like sometimes, for example, a site would break, but then, or like some, part of the page would not work, and then you reload, and then it works, for example, right? So that's like another like gray area, kind of. Is it working or not? Is it breakish or not? Like maybe we can preload for users to make it work. I don't know, but there's always nuance to that, and there's no easy answer, I guess.
Sounds good. I guess going forward, are you going to be looking at obviously allowing configurable options so you can deselect or have it auto select certain consent options as well?
Yeah. So we try to, like, the DuckDuckGo motto is make privacy simple, kind of. So we try to not to introduce too many customizations, and obviously it would also make the solution more complex. So right now we would often click on accept necessary cookies only, this option, when we can't just reject. So that's a thing we do. But as to go to the options and really let the user choose which kind of categories they want to enable, we don't plan to do that right now. I know there are, I think Consent-O-Matic does it, but I'm not sure if this is actually how it works on scale and how would it work. Yeah, so.
So as a user, I usually click on reject manually, but the most time-consuming part of the whole experience what I find is that some websites have dozens of checkboxes with legitimate interest. I have to uncheck those manually.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you automatically uncheck those, or is this part of the multi-workflow that you're implementing?
So this is something we do, one-click flows. It's only for this auto-generated site-specific resource token, but we still have these generic rules that cover 80% of all the pop-ups, and in there we do click all of those. So for example, OneTrust is the biggest CMP over there, and we have quite an extensive rule that clicks out all of these checkboxes. So yeah. Yeah, there's another question here. Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Hey.
The talk, I wasn't sure if you explored here in the solution, but I just had an idea of efficient would if you just, and instead of clicking or taking behavior instead of the users, whether by accepting or rejecting, how efficient would be if you just remove or close or just hide the components that are asking for this permission, the pop-up itself, or whatever is in the website that is trying to get permission either by accepting or rejecting, because like hide it from the DOM, remove it. Like,
yeah, that's it's something you could do. So our briefly talked about is that we choose to do this only when there is no way to actively reject, because we do want to send the site this signal that the user rejects, because then it would affect also, it would register in the site's logs, right? And they would, like, if they're compliant, they have to stop tracking also on the server side. So that's what I guess that's the biggest reason why we choose to do it like this. But sometimes there would be a banner that is just a notice and there is no reject buttons or anything. And then only in these cases, we would try to make a cosmetic rule that hides it.
I see. So for the cases of when you said like not accepting the cookies or not accepting the pop-up would break some other websites. I mean, would break some the core functionality with the website.
Mm-hmm.
Would just like removing the whole thing. Would it still like break it? Like, would you?
Well, I mean, of course, there are some specific breakages. So, for example, often if you hide it cosmetically, there would be like overlay that blocks the whole screen, or the scroll would be blocked because the site still thinks you're looking at the pop-up. So we would have to like do some additional steps to unblock this. But yeah, as I said, our main focus right now is on active rejection. I think there is still a lot of room there to expand, and the cosmetic hiding is kind of like secondary thing that we do.
Also, I just saw at the very end of the slide there was like a call for people to also like contribute in this.
Yeah.
Is this like the data you're generating? Is it also like open for people?
Yeah. This is all part of this library, auto consent. All the rules are there, and all the PRs go there, so you can see.
I understand this started recently. So how big is the data right now? Like, do you think it's do you have a big amount of data that is like covering a lot of domains, websites? Like, how big is the data that you have so far?
Well, we use when we are measuring the performance, we crawl 10,000 sites in each region, and that kind of gives us a picture. But yeah, that's usually how we do it. But and by the way, we publish some of these results in the same repository. There is a coverage JSON that we update every now and then. So for each rule, you would see some example sites that use this, and that's automatically generated from the rules.
Thank you so much.
There was a question here.
So thank you for the talk. Really interesting. And in the talk, you said that you first tried to ask LLM to create rules and said it was a disaster, right? But then you went on and you showed how LLM creates rules. So it was not. I'm confused here.
Yeah, I think it could be confusing. So what I meant is you cannot just tell it, just generate this whole complex JSON structure and expect it to really be the end result. So eventually, our system is like a combination of like, there is an AI step, which is basically just classifying, like filtering out, like, is this a cookie pop-up? And then if it says yes, then it's just like straightforward scripts, like extract some button elements and then a bunch of regexes, like to tell reject buttons from not reject buttons. And then, so it's kind of boring from there, like it's just good old, regexes. But the AI classification is very important because this is part that does require some context. And even though it's an easy task for LLM, it's kind of crucial in the whole system.
And the next question is, have you tried to use some kind of an agentic flow when, normally it works like that. So you give it and a number of instruments. And
Yeah.
basically, what I'm interested in, is it possible to create a little AI filter maintainer that has access to developer tools, to network requests, and can kind of inspect the DOM just like filter maintainers do, and just give it some work.
Yeah, that's what I meant with differ. So it didn't work when we tried it, but
It was agentic, right? So it was like a loop of.
yeah. So I think we were using it. It was when was it Puppeteer that came out with their MCP server or something. But yeah, it was a few months back. So I don't know. Like right now, maybe I know there are like big developments there. Maybe I think eventually it will be possible. I'm not sure if it is already there. So the reliability is the problem, right? So
Got it.
Thank you.
yep. Thank you.
Just a simple question. Have you tried to mitigate Admiral with AI?
Mitigate what? Sorry.
Admiral.
Oh, Admiral. With AI, no, we haven't tried this specific combination. I know we did some work in ad blocking for Admiral specifically, but yeah, there was no AI there.
Thanks. It's really interesting. I'm curious about scaling issues, though. I would have thought if you're generating individual rules for each site, for basically everything on the internet, right? You're going to end up with a lot of rules.
Yeah.
You're already talking about the issues you have with the PRs. Have you thought about what's going to happen when you have 10 million rules?
Yeah, so we had to do some refactoring. So first of all, we had to come up with a compact, minified version of these rules. So it's like compressed. It's not just compressed JSON, but it's like some minified structure that expands to this. And then in runtime, of course, you need to make it more efficiently to filter out this. Yeah, we did some work in there. We expect that it's. I think we solved this for the coming couple of years, hopefully. But yeah, of course, like at some point, it will become a bottleneck again. So and this is where, like, I personally hope that by that time we'll have something on device, that we maybe some of the simplest scenarios would be handled without any like server-side rules, so we could like trim down the list.
So you're hoping that all the filter list maintainers are going to be put out of a job?
Honestly, I don't think so. Like it's yeah. I know it's a topic for the panel. I guess I know it's one of the, but yeah, like there's so much. So far, we've only been relieved by this.
How many rules are there at the moment?
Well, it's like thousands.
Like hundreds of thousands?
Not hundreds of thousands yet, I think, but like.
Okay, 3,000.
3,000, yeah. Like we're. Yeah, so it depends on how big your crawl is, right? So I think at some point we might just expand it and just apply this to it.
And I guess he's only making rules for cases where it's not using one of the big...
Yeah, of course, like we check that it's not already covered, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
And then another thing that reminds, like once we started doing these site-specific rules, patterns emerge naturally that you see that there is like 10 rules that use exactly the same selector. So it kind of tells you that, okay, this is another CMP that you maybe want to write a generic rule for. So we would look at that as kind of another signal for us to look at menu. And that the menu, like the generic rules, you still have to write manually because there's a lot of like thought into it.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.